Ever find yourself kind of stuck going through the motions? You know, like
Yeah.
you're putting in the work but not really getting anywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Today's deep dive, well, it kind of tackles that feeling, that sense of uh, being trapped in a cycle. We're diving into the endless cycle, this super thought-provoking piece of dystopian fiction by the Dystopian Vault.
It's definitely a good one.
So from the jump, the story throws us right into this desolate world.
Yeah.
You've got two figures, faces hidden, pedaling through this wasteland. And everything is just gray, dusty, the same.
Yeah.
It's like a broken record stuck on repeat.
It's wild how the author uses the setting right off the bat to create this instant feeling of unease. Like it's not just empty, but it's the same emptiness everywhere you look. And that really reinforces this whole idea of being stuck.
Yeah, like a hamster wheel in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
And speaking of going nowhere, we've got our two cyclists, right? And as they journey, we start to get these glimpses into their thoughts. They're realizing something's not quite right, like this weird sense of deja vu, but cranked up to 11. They keep catching glimpses of each other, recognizing something familiar, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And this unsettling feeling just keeps building until, bam!
One of them turns.
And for the first time really sees who they're with.
And it's not some long-lost friend or anything. It's their own reflection, staring back at them. Older, a little worse for wear, definitely marked by the journey.
Can you imagine? Talk about a reality check?
It's like that moment you look in the mirror after a long time and barely recognize yourself, except this is amplified like 1,000 times in this dystopian world.
And that's where the endless cycle, well, it really starts to mess with your head. This encounter with the self, it completely shatters their reality. The road, the bikes, even their sense of who they are, it all starts to crumble.
It's classic dystopian fiction, but used in such a powerful way here. It makes you question your own grip on reality. Like, what if everything we build our lives on is just an illusion waiting to be shattered?
It makes you think, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing that got me. Instead of freaking out completely, there's this flicker of acceptance from the characters. It's subtle, but it's there.
It is subtle, and it's actually the key to the whole story. They realize that escape might be impossible, at least in this world they're in. But they still have a choice. They can choose how they react to being trapped.
So it's less about fighting the current and more about learning to float.
Exactly. They can't change the wasteland, but they can choose how they exist within it. And that's a pretty powerful idea, if you ask me.
It really makes you think about those areas in our own lives where we might feel stuck. Like, are we just pedaling away without really getting anywhere? And if so, is there a way to choose a different experience even within that cycle?
Lots to unpack there, for sure.
Definitely. We'll be back after a quick break to dive into those parallels and explore this whole idea of choice a bit further. It's like trying to change the song on a playlist that's stuck on repeat. You can't always escape the loop, but you can try to find a different way to move to it.
And the beat to this particular loop, the one these characters are stuck in, it's the relentless spin of those bicycle wheels. Constant motion, a constant striving to get somewhere, but the scenery never really changes, does it?
It's like running on a treadmill.
Right.
Putting in the effort, but are you actually getting anywhere?
Precisely. And that imagery really gets at the heart of what the story is exploring, this idea of progress versus change.
And isn't that something we all grapple with at some point or another? Like, you think about those times you get sucked into work emails back to back to back. You feel super productive in the moment.
But then you come up for air and your inbox is just as full as it was before.
Exactly. It's like my own personal endless cycle right there. And I think that's what makes this story so relatable. Those bicycles, they become this really powerful symbol for all the ways we can get stuck in routines and habits and thought patterns, even when they might not be serving us anymore.
It's like we're all pedaling away, hoping for a change of scenery.
Okay, so then how do we break free? Or is that even possible?
Yeah.
I mean, in the story, it's that moment of recognition, right? When the characters finally see each other for who they really are. Is that what it takes to step off the metaphorical treadmill?
I'd say it's more like the first step towards choosing a different path. That moment of truth when we confront ourselves in our reality, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about waking up to the cycle, acknowledging its existence. And that's crucial because you can't really change a pattern if you don't even realize you're stuck in it.
So self-awareness is kind of like hitting that pause button on the playlist, giving ourselves a chance to actually hear the music.
Exactly. It's about creating that space for reflection, for choice. Because once we're aware of the cycle, then we can start to ask ourselves the important question, like, is this rhythm really working for me, or is it time to try a different tune?
Okay, but the story doesn't exactly give us a step-by-step guide on how to do that, does it?
And that's what I appreciate about it. It
Mhm.
doesn't offer easy answers because, let's face it, life rarely does. It's in the questions that the story poses that we find the real meat of it, the stuff that stays with us long after we've finished reading.
It's like the story is holding up a mirror and asking us, what are you going to do about it?
Precisely. It's a call to action disguised as a dystopian tale. And I think that's why it resonates so deeply with people, because we all have those areas in our lives where we feel stuck, those patterns we can't seem to break free from.
You mentioned earlier something about the setting reflecting the character's internal states. Can we circle back to that for a second? That whole idea feels kind of huge, and I want to make sure I'm wrapping my head around it.
Absolutely. It's a key element of the story, and it's something that often comes up in dystopian fiction. This idea that the external one is a reflection of the internal one. So in the endless cycle, that barren wasteland, it's not just a random backdrop. It's a mirror reflecting the emptiness and the stagnation that the characters are feeling inside.
So it's like their internal world is shaping their external reality.
It's more of a feedback loop. If we're constantly focused on the negative, on what's missing, it's going to color how we experience everything around us. And that can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. We see emptiness because we feel empty, and that in turn fuels more feelings of emptiness, and so the cycle continues.
So if we're always looking for the wasteland, that's all we're ever going to see.
It's not about pretending the wasteland isn't there. It's about choosing to also look for those pockets of beauty, those moments of grace that exist even in the most desolate of landscapes, because they're always there, even if we don't always see them.
So maybe it's less about changing the scenery and more about changing how we look at it.
Now you're getting it. It's about shifting our perspective from one of lack and limitation to one of possibility and potential. And that's a choice we can make regardless of our external circumstances.
It's like we're looking into a mirror that's reflecting another mirror. And all we see is this endless hall of our own perceptions.
Exactly. And that's the real magic of the endless cycle. It's not just a story about two people stuck in a wasteland. It's about how we can trap ourselves in our own minds, in our own patterns.
So if we're both the prisoners and the wardens of our own cycles, how do we even begin to break free? Are we destined to just keep pedaling in circles forever?
Well, the story doesn't exactly come with an instruction manual, and I kind of like that about it because life rarely offers those quick and easy solutions. But there is a powerful message here about the power of choice. Even when we feel stuck, even when we feel like we're just going through the motions, we always have a choice.
Even if it's just choosing how we react to the situation.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of awareness, those little glimmers of possibility that can shift our perspective and maybe even open us up to new ways of being and seeing the world.
You mentioned earlier that maybe the cycle itself isn't the enemy, but our resistance to it. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Think about it. When we resist something, when we fight against it, we actually give it more power. We get so caught up in the struggle that we miss out on the potential for growth and change that might exist within that very thing we're trying to escape.
Just like, again, instead of trying to outrun the cycle, we need to turn around and face it.
Precisely. It's about making a conscious choice to engage differently, to find a different rhythm within the repetition, to look for those moments of beauty and grace, even in the midst of what we might perceive as a wasteland.
So it's not about changing the music, it's about maybe changing the way we dance to it.
Now you're getting it. It's about recognizing that even in those seemingly endless cycles, in those patterns that we feel trapped by, there's always potential for growth, for change, for a new perspective.
And maybe that starts with simply acknowledging the cycle's existence, hitting that pause button and really listening to the music that's playing.
Exactly. It's about waking up to those moments when we're on autopilot, when we're just going through the motions, and making a conscious choice to show up differently.
So for our listeners out there who might be feeling stuck in their own endless cycle, what's the one thing you hope they take away from this conversation?
Don't be afraid to look in the mirror. Even if what you see staring back at you is your own reflection in a desolate wasteland, because it's in those moments of honest self-reflection that we often find the courage and the clarity to choose a different path, to create a new story, and to find those pockets of beauty and meaning, even in the most unexpected of places.
I love that. It's a powerful reminder that even in a world that can feel repetitive and at times meaningless, we always have the power to choose a different experience. So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pedaling forward, even if it feels like you're going in circles, because you never know what you might discover on the other side of that cycle. Till next time, happy exploring.